another mission we have in our pipeline would be the fastest human-made object in space. Another one is looking for signs of biologic life, or really confirming signs of biologic life on a different planet. I mean, all these things are huge legacy-making missions, and that's why I'm so excited that we're focused on these kinds of missions instead of putting up another satellite constellation.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand.
Is your business mission out of this world? We can honestly say that today's guest has a mission to help humanity broaden its knowledge of the earth and the universe in which we exist. Every year around the world, dozens of universities, civil space agencies, and nonprofit organizations plan crucial space missions focused on exploration, science, and education objectives, and then they struggle to get the funding needed to turn their dreams into reality. And that's why Sarah Pousho founded Space Bridge Partners, an advisory firm that connects funders with space missions. Let's learn more about Sarah's story and how Space Bridge Partners came to be.
Sarah, welcome to Be Bold Branding.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We're excited to have you on here. This is actually very fascinating subject. So, before we actually get into what that entails, you want to give everybody a little background, like of you, and then how did you end up here in the space of space?
Sure. Well, I've always been interested in space since I was very young. As a girl, I was going to be an astronaut. Like, that was my story. And got a little bit of sidetracked after I graduated from UC Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley. But the good thing that came out of that, one of the many good things, is that I met one of my co-founders at Space Bridge Partners while we were both at school at Cal. And we've been friends ever since. He's also was very interested in space, which is how we sort of bonded over our love of both wanting to be an astronaut. But when I graduated from Cal, I ended up taking a temp job that was going to be for 2 weeks tops that turned into 5 years at a company that was a calendar publisher. And that led to another job at another calendar publisher, which led to a book publisher, which led to basically 30 years in consumer products, mostly focused on kids licensed products. So I headed up sales and licensing teams at a variety of different companies where we licensed, put together global licensing deals for Disney and Paramount and Warner Brothers, et cetera, so we could use their IP on our products. And then I also sold those to Walmart, Costco, Target, all the chain stores in North America and many of them in Europe as well. So did 30 years of that and kept in touch with my co-founder, Guillermo, who I met at Cal, and one day commented on one of his LinkedIn posts saying, "I'm living vicariously through your posts." And he's like, "Now's the time," which is so exciting. But this was about 3 years ago. Now is the time for people that aren't in space to get into space, which is things that something that people don't realize can actually happen. It's not just for billionaires or rocket scientists, that all different people from all walks of life in finance and marketing and sales and everything related to needing to live in space is needed right now. So I just started a bunch of space conferences globally, and pretty soon I was asked to head up the Space Bridge Partners. So here I am.
That's great.
Wow.
So is that it? Like in sort of a nutshell, is Space Bridge Partners trying to get together like all the services that will be necessary, I guess, just like here on Earth, that would be duplicated in space? Or is it more the financial side of that? What's the main goal?
So we're helping mission organizers that are doing that. So we're kind of a dot connector, if you will. So we have a lot of mission organizers that come to us that have missions that don't really have a commercial ROI, but they're super vital in terms of helping us further our exploration, and even things like whether or not humans can reproduce in space, and things that are going to be really important when we have a colony on Mars or the moon or somewhere else in the solar system. Mm-hmm. So mission organizers will come to us. Usually they have already some government money or grant funding, but they don't have everything that they need to literally get their mission off the ground. And so they come to us to fill the gap. And so we fundraise from 3 different sources. One is from high net worth individuals or family offices via philanthropic donations. The second is through marketing activation dollars with brand sponsorships. And the third is licensing royalties through media partnerships. So 3 different ways that we sort of connect the dots. The mission organizers are way more worried about the R&D and their launch partner and figuring out all the different capacities that they're going to be needing for their mission. And they don't have time to reach out to a million different funding sources to try to find this money. So, and then there's on the other end of it, there's a lot of brands and media partners and wealthy individuals that are interested in space and not quite sure how to get there. And so we try to help them.
Wow.
That is fascinating. Where do you find the funding companies? Or the private individuals and, other, I mean, I know you mentioned family people, like how did you start that process? Like, how did you all of a sudden one day say, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. I want to connect the dots and be that bridge between, space missions and funding individuals or companies. But where did that all start? Like, how did you find the first one?
Let me clarify that we technically have not funded a mission yet because we're only 6 months old. We just launched in January. So we're in the process. I'm hoping to be able to have an announcement to make shortly. But I can't take credit for the idea. This was my co-founder's idea, Guillermo Sunline. This is the guy that I met in college. He had this idea because he has another company whose mission is to figure out how humans can inhabit the Venusian atmosphere. And it's super possible. I know the first thought people have is like, there's no way, it's too hot and you can't breathe and all that stuff. But 50 kilometers above the surface of Venus is the same gravity as on Earth. It's the same barometric pressure as on Earth. It's about 85 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's super livable conditions. So if you can develop some sort of floating habitat, and he reached out to launch partners and tried to get these missions. He had a series of 10 missions trying to get them off the ground. And everyone's like, this is awesome. We would love to do it. It's going to cost this much money. And he's like, well, we don't have it. We were just hoping you'd, kind of sponsor it for us. And everyone said, come back when you had money. And then Guillermo realized there's tons of universities and small civil space agencies that don't have the budgets that NASA has. And somebody could help these people. So he's had this idea germinating for a while. And I took it over last September. So I've been on it for about 10 months. And we officially launched in January. So well,
congratulations.
To your short question of where do you find these people is word of mouth and networking.
Yeah.
Through my background, I have connections with media companies and brand sponsors, not so much in the high net worth individual space, but Guillermo does know a few of them, and it's very word of mouth. They're a very private community. So we're very mindful of creating the right relationships and making sure that, we are confidential about who we're raising money for and like that. But it's basically word of mouth and relationship building, which is why Guillermo knew I'd be good at this job because I've spent 30 years doing it. So
yeah,
that is so fascinating. But because, like so many times in so many industries and so many businesses, people have this vision. I've been one of them in the past. And you have this vision to be able to do something. And there's going to come a time when to take the next step, you need other partners that believe in that cause, right? And namely money. A lot of times, and especially I would think in something like this that would require a lot. So hats off, first off, to Guillermo and to you for even identifying that. And then congratulations, obviously, on your launch 6 months ago, because it sounds like it's something that's so valuable that the normal populace, we don't think about it. Like, oh, look, another person's in space. I mean, I am the type of guy that like, okay, there's another $1 billion gone, right? Type of thing. But you just don't think about it. Well, there's so many other ancillaries that are going to be important to that. And all of them need funding. And so,
true.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you. That's one of the reasons why we decided to focus on these science and education and exploration missions, because those are the ones, like I mentioned earlier, are hugely valuable to humankind, but don't necessarily have a commercial ROI, especially in the beginning.
Right.
And so, one of the examples, one of the companies we're working with actually has a new development in vitro fertilization, which will completely help women on Earth conceive at a cheaper cost because it will take fewer tries because he's increased the success rate of it. And at the same time, he is figuring out whether or not humans can reproduce in less than 1 g of gravity, which if we are going to have colonies on the moon and Mars, we're going to need to reproduce and have generations of people up there. So if we can't do it in less than 1 g of gravity, then we got to think of plan B.
Like what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button and learn how you can change how you're seen and charge what you're worth.
Right.
Wow. What a connective web, though. That's incredible. So you mentioned media, and of course you have, the media ties. What role does media really serve in this mission, Sarah?
Getting the word out. So in fact, the person that's involved in the IVF missions actually is having a documentary shot about him. So these are some of the relationships we're trying to put together to educate the public, basically. But also, it's just so exciting to learn about what's happening in space that you don't normally think about. So how do we build that ground momentum? All the space conferences I've been to lately the general public still is like, well, that's for millionaires, not for me. But that's changing, right? So getting the word out, basically. So we negotiate contracts where they can get exclusive access to the team and footage and, all that good stuff. But that's the important role of media for sure.
Well, I mean, look, at some point, the locomotive headed west and how we were going to get it over the Mississippi River and things like that have all been just as daunting tasks, right? That were solved. And so every one of these problems in space and things, they will be solved. And so that's also another awesome thing about this situation. It's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. And you're involved in that. And then I would think that it might even be something at some point where a layman could even know that he's invested in progression.
Yes, right? That's the goal. Yes.
Kind of like a GoFundMe for space, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And hopefully all your media connections, Sarah, will get you guys noticed by Elon Musk or Richard Branson, right? And I'm sure you guys have already thought of all those avenues and may already have connections in that arena for sure. Yes. What about the movie industry?
Same idea for, documentaries and things like that. That's the same idea as having them involved to help share the story and the storytelling around what the space industry is becoming. There was a great documentary that just launched on HBO called Wild, Wild Space about some of the news, how space is becoming less government run and more commercial, and what the advantages of that are. And it's really snowballing right now. It's just such an exciting time to be in the space sector.
I bet. And I bet there's like a large percentage of space missions that are abandoned due to lack of funding at some point, isn't there?
There are. That's why we're trying to help with that. Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of lost dreams.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which sadly mean that the progression for the human race is stalled a little somewhat, because all these new technologies, no one's spending the money on getting them done and advanced. And I mean, there's so many advances in medicine and like your foam mattress you're sleeping on is thanks to the astronauts. Your, GPS is due to the Apollo missions. So many things that we use every day, using your credit card at a retailer, that uses satellite communications. There's so many things that are reliant on technology that comes from space that people don't even realize. So
yeah. And like when you said that about the foam mattress, I even thought like ancillary products we use every day that were invented for a different purpose. And then we recognize, oh, look, well, this makes a perfect mattress.
Exactly.
It's not just insulation for a part of a spaceship type of a thing. And so much of that comes it's like a trickle down. And that's amazing.
Now, my branding and sponsorship brain's going crazy over here right now, because I'm thinking of like, what are all the unconventional ways and things that you can do to get people interested in this project? And wouldn't it be awesome to be like the first musician or group of musicians to perform in space? Like, how do we get somebody to fund that, right? They may not be interested in having somebody live there, but having somebody be a first to do something in space, those the ideas for that are completely endless. Like you said, the mattress company, Serta or Tempur-Pedic or somebody like that to throw some funds in toward this. What's the average fund or investment levels, that you guys are looking for?
We like to say funding levels because we're not
Okay.
brokers, we're not a VC firm, so we're looking for funders, not investors. Just to clarify that point, this is a new concept. I think we're the only ones doing this, so people immediately go to the investor word. But yeah, the funding levels that we're looking for, and this is why we're looking at 3 different sources of funding, because we know the missions are so expensive that it's probably not going to be one billionaire writing a giant check. The missions currently in our pipeline need anywhere from $5 million to over $450 million. So that's what we're looking at. And again, like that's likely going to be a combination of a few different sources of funding to call that together.
Sure.
And 5 million, if you think about it, to have that, on your resume, if you will, lack of a better term, to say I invested in this particular space project and was one of the people that was responsible for making it happen. That's 5 million is not a whole lot of money especially for a lot of the family funds and so forth.
Exactly. That's what's so exciting about all of these commercial space companies. They brought the cost down dramatically. So it is feasible for a quote unquote cheap $5 million mission to get up there. And you also bring up a good point. I mean, a lot of the missions in our pipeline are legacy making, this one with IDF for sure. So even though it's a philanthropic donation, to have your name tied with some of these, I mean, another mission we have in our pipeline would be the fastest human-made object in space. Another one is looking for signs of biologic life, or really confirming signs of biologic life on a different planet. I mean, all these things are huge legacy making missions. And that's why I'm so excited that we're focused on these kinds of missions instead of putting up another satellite constellation.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Sure.
Yes. And, you think of pharmaceutical companies and, that could invest in what if there's the cure for cancer or any kind of cancer.
Right.
Well, I don't know if they cure anything, but maybe they can sell you something in space to, prolong your life while they don't cure what's wrong with you. Different podcast.
You just open up a can of worms. But yeah, I mean, just thinking of those opportunities and thinking of them in, out of the box ways is just I bet you guys have a heck of a lot of fun doing this. Like, what does your whiteboard look like?
Oh my God. Well, first of all, yes, I have fun. This is my dream job for sure. But I mean, the whiteboard is kind of full of endless ideas. I mean, that's what's so exciting. No one's ever done this before. And space is, a place where no one's ever done a lot of things before as well. And so just to be involved in the future and try to accelerate the innovation that's happening, it's so exciting.
Yeah. Well, you come from Berkeley and okay, so that's a progressive school, right? Like, you must have been thinking, I know you said I was going to go towards being an astronaut or whatnot. I mean, but did you have like this explorative mind in college that and study something in Berkeley that was like, or is this like totally just beyond, what you ever thought that you'd be doing?
Well, I definitely never thought this kind of job would exist, so it's very exciting. But at Cal, I definitely explored. I went in as an astronomy major, and I graduated as a rhetoric major. So yes, I was all over the place and taking math and physics, but also French and Spanish and linguistics and obviously rhetoric. So it was a great time to explore whatever I could at one of the best institutions in the United States. It was so exciting, and I still feel really honored that I had that experience, but it definitely helped kind of springboard me in a really long roundabout way to my career today. But I learned so much along the way since graduating.
No doubt. But the part of the reason I asked that is, with our company, with this podcast especially, like we are always very interested in what brought people to where they are, right? Because we find in our own lives and then with the people that we interview that there's these connectors that so we've had these permeating thoughts, whether they came to the forefront or not, and then we have these life experiences that bring us, to this spot, and then we look back and we're like, oh my goodness, I was made for this, and so it sounds like you're a perfect example of that. And even though, like you said, a lot of us take this long way around, if you will, but then we end up in a spot and we're like, I was made to do this, and it sounds like you found that niche.
I feel so lucky. But you bring up a really good point. I've managed a lot of people in those 30 years, and I've found that the people that are the most successful and most excited about getting out of bed in the morning are ones that are doing jobs that A, they're good at, but B, they like doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I also come across a lot of people that are like, well, I became an accountant and I don't like doing it, but this is how I'm paying the bills now. And they don't really consider that, they wanted to do something else, or at least even if it was something that doesn't pay a lot of money, like one of their hobbies, like try to get involved in some of that. But whenever I coach people, the first thing I ask them, regardless of what position I hire them for, is where do you want to be in 5 years? Like, what's your dream job? And then that will help me steer them, even if they end up not staying at the company where we're working together. It helps steer them in the right direction, and they're way happier in their career. And that's just super valuable. Nobody wants to work with people that are super bummed to be there every day.
Hey, man, it's valuable for them and valuable for their coworkers.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point you bring out. Yeah, really good.
It sure is. And while we're on the topic of space, this is sort of really not it at all, but I have to share an embarrassing story with you, Sarah. So Michael and I were sitting one day and we're talking about the shows that we watched when we were kids. And one was called Lost in Space. Do you remember that show?
Oh, yes, I do.
For anybody out there, you have to go to YouTube because the first episode of Lost in Space is on YouTube. And I remember being so enthralled with that as kids, like it's new frontier, right? This is awesome, right? And I thought the guy was really cute and, the kid in the video. So we actually watched the first episode and we were both dying laughing, just looking at each other thinking, were we crazy? Like this is stupid.
That's all we had.
But it was a lot of fun. So I don't know, when you talk about space, I just had to share that embarrassing story. So for anybody out there who hasn't seen it, Lost in Space, go look it up on YouTube. I can't remember the year it came out, but it was laughable at best.
Yeah, it was. Well, especially because it was called Lost in Space and it was very terrestrial.
Exactly.
Right. On Earth.
Nothing space about it at all.
But you never know. Somebody might be listening to this podcast right now that had a part in creating Lost in Space, and they're going to reach out to you, Sarah.
That might be.
They're going to fund your next mission.
Help exactly.
Yeah,
maybe help fund your next mission. You don't know.
That's so true. Well, tell us, Sarah, in a perfect world, like, a year, 5 years from now, what would you like to see happen with Space Bridge Partners?
Well, expand our global team and have kind of mini versions of us in many countries around the world. I'm working on my co-founders are international at this point. Guillermo lives in Barcelona, and our third co-founder lives in Doha, which is in Qatar. And we have advisors in London, another advisor in Doha, advisors all across the US. So I want to expand the team basically and help as many missions as possible. But ultimately, I hope that there's more Space Bridge partners out there that are helping fund these science missions and getting people used to the idea that you don't have to be a rocket scientist, literally, to be involved in the industry or support the industry. And hopefully people will realize how important these kinds of missions are. That's the goal, is public education and expanding our team, personally expanding our team, but ultimately public education and making sure that we can help advance space as quickly as possible.
And
that's awesome.
And potentially literally bring about that next frontier.
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell the audience how they can learn more about you or reach out to you if they have more questions. What's the best contacts?
Well, I'm definitely on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to reach out. You can also reach out via our website, spacebridgepartners.com. There's a contact page on the last page. Any one of those emails will get to me. And those are the easiest ways. But I'd love to connect to people on LinkedIn. Happy to network with anybody. I love talking about it. In case you can't tell, this is such a fun job and a fun industry to be in.
Oh, we can definitely tell. Love it. And loved having you here. And, we've seen some pretty miraculous things happen over the years through podcasting. We've met some genuinely amazing and unique people that you just never, ever thought you would meet. And I'm hoping that one day this podcast reaches somebody that's going to connect with you and say, I'm ready to fund it, Sarah. Let's do it.
I love it. I hope so.
Thank you so much for your time, Sarah. We appreciate you very much.
Thank you. It was so much fun talking with you guys.
Ready to change how you're seen and charge what you're worth? If you're not getting enough opportunities to meet with ideal customers, or the prospects you're meeting with just aren't ideal, it's most likely your brand that's holding you back. So if you're a coach, consultant, or expert who is on the rise, you need our ultimate guide to a freedom-based brand. Download it free now at brandfaceguide.com.